Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Sunday and it's already December the 1st, 2024, and today's topic will be troubleshooting an illustration. And I'm actually starting over on this video because I had been talking for about 5 minutes and realized I didn't hit record on my phone because I'm recording on my iPod. I'm using that as the microphone. So now I'm going to have to repeat myself. So yeah, welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. I sketch and paint and draw every day and post every day, and then I also I use timers, which I had already started before I realized I was not recording. But yeah, today I'll do a 10-minute, I'll use 10-minute sessions is what I call it. So I started a 10-minute timer. So since I post every day, you can kind of use these videos as a way to keep you company and build a habit. And a lot of times I just kind of continue if I'm working on like a sketchbook page or something, or like a certain topic. So this week has been about the artistic journey and basically what it means to be a beginner, intermediate, and advanced artist, and the journey and the skills involved and different concepts. So there was a video about the basic elements of drawing. And then for the past few days, I've been talking about the intermediate level, which in this diagram or illustration, it's kind of the long stretch, the plateau. And so it's really about all the skills and the habits and stuff. And then the next stage or level is the advanced kind of concepts. And I wasn't sure how to go about talking about that. But as it turns out, since I'm calling this troubleshooting an illustration, this will help me to illustrate sort of the more advanced concepts. So I'll put up a before picture. This is a continuation of yesterday's sketch where I was designing this character. I'm thinking she's a half-elf. For my world building basically, and which was good. I was happy with it. But yeah, I'll put it up here and you'll see that it's pretty different because I painted over it because I didn't like the direction it was going. And that kind of goes into the advanced kind of stuff. So it's all of it. So it's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So from the beginner standpoint, which in the previous recording that I didn't realize I was not recording, I went over this part. So as the beginner part of this, it's good to practice coming up with, to sketch basically. Just sketch enough to where you can get your ideas down in a way that makes sense or that reads, as I say. So for example, like this is a landscape basically, and it reads, and I was using it as a analogy for like the artistic journey. So just to begin with, I'm going to make this look more like that because this is sort of an illustration of that, like a more detailed illustration or a more developed picture. So that's what I'll start off with. The intermediate part has to do with the fact that from yesterday's sketch, I could have gone sort of the more predictable or safe route for me as far as how to color it or how to ink it. I have sort of for me, for example, like my profile picture, I changed it, and it's the one about the facing the challenge or the hero's journey. This was maybe last week, I think. And also in the community section of the channel, I posted a sketch. So like that style is for me the safest kind of thing. Like I know I can do it. I know I can pretty much pull that off. But then in the intermediate level, I mean, once you get good at doing like a certain thing, then you want to keep expanding your skills. So it could be something like adding color, adding different mediums, that kind of thing. And in a way, that's what this is. I mean, I could have gone the safe route with the previous sketch and just kind of colored it in, but I could already tell it was kind of boring, and sometimes you do these things sort of subconsciously. So I'll kind of talk about that, and I'll put up the picture again. I don't have it because I painted over it, but I can remember it. So while it was a good sketch, and if you, like I said, if you kind of do it the way that I normally would do it, like ink it or just kind of color it in sort of basically, and you can kind of see kind of right here, I use almost 3 different styles like right here, and I ended up going with more of the painted style here, which again, it's like a subconscious thing. I actually even mentioned that I might make this be kind of a mix, and it kind of is a mix, and that's kind of how I'm going to approach it, sort of a mixture of all of these. And so part of the intermediate level is sort of expanding your skills and going beyond your comfort zones, but like producing enough artwork to sort of show yourself like that you know how to do something, like build your skills. And so that's really why I have it as like this kind of plateau thing. It's just a journey. And the advance, to kind of bring that into it, is a little bit more kind of a mindset and kind of an attitude and sort of experience. Like you kind of have to have some experience. So for example, in a way, like this is sort of the opposite approach to the other one. So this is more painterly, which it's just kind of a different approach. And now that I've talked about this for a little while, let's get some sketching done, or some art. So what I'm going to do is kind of get rid of, so I just use this white paint marker. It's a Sharpie marker to get rid of stuff. I'm going to make this look this composition look more like that, just to begin with. And I'm not going to rush. I mean, because it took me a couple of hours. I worked on it and I didn't like the direction it was going. Like it just didn't feel or look good to me, although the sketch was fine. But it just wasn't, it didn't have like that emotion that I was, and the character. And that's kind of what I mean about this kind of has color, but that's okay. Oh yeah, and it'll kind of mix a little bit. It's because I was using it on this thing, but that's alright. We'll use that. What was I saying? Yeah, like kind of the advanced concepts is this idea that, and I call it advanced because it's kind of hard to teach, but it exists, and it's this idea of like, how do you know, like you could have done it kind of the safe way, but it didn't capture the character. It didn't, like you didn't really have like the character. And to me, that's kind of it comes from experience. It comes from just your vision and like your ideas and stuff. So what I'm doing is adjusting the composition, but also covering up some of the writing. That's kind of why I don't want to write, but that's okay because it also can look kind of cool. And so my point is that while this is kind of the opposite direction that the sketch was going in, because that one was more about the line art and then coloring it in, whereas this one is painting, which is more about the color and like kind of the overall like shape. Kind of a different approach. With painting, it tends to be like kind of general, like you sort of start more general, more broad, and then move in to the specific, whereas with line art you tend to start with specific, the line itself, and then kind of expand the picture. So that's 10 minutes. I'll start another one. And yeah, my goal is to just get this to a good spot basically and troubleshoot it. And this is part of the troubleshooting. I just call it that because this, I mean, at this point, this is an illustration. It's become an illustration. I mean, maybe this whole page. But I call it troubleshooting because at this point, it could, like, I see the potential in it, but it's not quite there. But going back to what I was saying, this, although it's a different approach, you can see that it's still basically the same drawing. It's still the same composition. However, I think this has more of the character. Like, I feel like she looks more like that character. And that was part of what was going on as I was working on the initial sketch. It wasn't really doing anything for me. And I knew I could have just kind of just did it the way I usually do it, but why? Especially since now it's different if you're doing like freelance work or something like that, which that's what I used to do, or I did for a little while. Then yeah, like you kind of want to just do it the way that you do it, so that you can, I mean, if the client is happy. But if this is for myself, then I'm looking for the feeling of it. And in fact, when I was doing it for clients, it would be the same. They would send back revisions. They would be like, okay, do this and do that. And I would do it because, I mean, obviously it was my job to do that. But then I'm at a point where, well, why don't I just do it the way that I want to do it? Because yeah, sometimes I didn't agree, but you had to just do it. And I just got tired of that. So I'd rather just do the artwork that I believe in, that I like, and then people will either like it or they won't. And so that's kind of moving into more of the advance, honestly, because we do live in a world where you have to make money, and so that does factor into the artistic journey. So and I mean, I still do. I mean, I still need money also, but I'm just right now I'm currently able to do this, so I'm just thankful for the opportunity and taking advantage of it. So as I do this, I'm just kind of, I'm not gonna try to force this. This is troubleshooting, so you kind of want to be methodical, and like I wanted to start with the composition because I knew I could adjust that to make it look more like the sketch. So for example, from what I can tell, I'm just going to keep covering this up because it's in the distance, and make it look more further back. And also the horizon is lower. Like if she were standing the horizon line is more like right here, according to the sketch. So yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then the other thing is, when you add stuff like color, for example, yeah, it does make it more complex. So I've done videos where I talked about like doing a color study. Now, this is the color study, so I'm not too bothered by that. Like, this could work as a color study, and in fact, like, it is. And I could do a more, like, a larger illustration if I wanted to have more details and stuff. And it would work because I worked out a lot of the colors and the composition, so that's good. But yeah, definitely if you were going to use like really nice paper or canvas or something, or work larger, you definitely want to have a better idea. So that's kind of what happened, was that from the previous sketch, the initial sketch, when you go in to add color like I did, it, like, you have to think about that. You have to think about the color scheme, you have to think about the values. So luckily it's small, like this illustration is small enough to where it's not like that big of a deal. And I kind of keep it kind of small just because the markers I'm using are small. So, and also keeping in mind that I didn't have a color study. Like, this is the color study. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I learned is that, like, I don't really draw that many single trees like this. So there's something that's also kind of adds complexities when you're drawing stuff. And then on top of that, if you're going to color it or paint it, then that makes it a little bit more challenging. Also, the other thing is, landscapes have their own kind of sort of rules, I guess, to make them look good. So one thing I learned was, like, the values are relative and the colors are relative, so that what I thought, like how dark I thought like the tree had to be, it wasn't as dark as it should have been. So like, I made it too dark. That's one of the reasons I had to paint over it, because it just didn't look right. And that has to do with sunlight and landscapes and stuff like that. Now, this is a more cartoony version. I'm not trying to make it look like that realistic, but some of that, I wanted some realism. And then also the other thing is that this is more contrasty, like the character here, but it works if the purpose is character design. And so the main purpose, so for example, I'm not trying to make this look like this photorealistic landscape with somebody like in there. The purpose of this was the character design. So at the end of the day, like, that was the main thing that needed to work out, was, did I have something that could be a character that I could develop further? So that's like the main purpose. But I think everything else just kind of adds to it, like the setting and the background. You can use that to enhance it, but mainly the character had to work. And I made some adjustments and had to like rework stuff, and that is part of that intermediate thing that we've been talking about, is being able to do that. And so if it's hard to rework, if that's the sticking point, is reworking. And what I mean is, for example, like, I had to adjust her leg, like her pose. Like, I'm okay with this pose, and I think this pose is actually more like a character design than the previous one. I thought the previous one was kind of stiff or like boring or something like that. But I mean, I know that I would develop it. I give myself room. But that's kind of my point, is at the intermediate level, that's the kind of stuff you kind of need to practice and work out. Like, can you see like what's wrong with like the drawing and stuff like that. And maybe that's kind of going into more of the advanced kind of stuff, where can you be your own critic, or can you critique your own work? Let's say not necessarily like a critic, because I definitely can be my own critic. I know that, but more than being a critic, it's about, can you critique your work without freaking out? Because I kind of had that. Like it kind of triggers you when something's not going, when it's not looking right, or like if like the sketch is messed up. Like, so that's 10 minutes. I'll start another one. So what I'm doing here is I'm just gonna add a few shadows, like details. And so what I'm doing is I like the overall vibe of like the colors and stuff. And so like I was saying about painting, you tend to start more broad. You kind of look at like the big shapes and like the colors and how they harmonize. So when I'm glancing at it, it reads to me, meaning, for example, I wanted her, like, you can pick all sorts of different colors. That's my thing. That's what I'm saying. It's, so I like to keep it kind of limited at first. And then like I made her cloak be the same color as like the grass and the leaves, which also I decided to make the leaves and the grass like match. And because I feel like that's sort of the purpose of the cloak, but then you can add more detail on top of that. And so that's what I'm going to do, is just kind of add some more detail. But there's a lot of good things already. And so that's the other thing, is to do your best to not mess up the like what's good. So that's one way to refine. Like, this is mixed media, and I'm not thinking that everybody's going to do their stuff in this way. This is not really the usual way that I do it either, but it can be effective, and it can be like a fun way to approach it. So part of what I'm going to do is go off of how there's some shadows on this, because I'd like that look. So I'm going to sort of do that without. So this was, I didn't paint this one, and if I can keep that, like I will. But definitely this is mixed media, so there's not really a ton of rules. It's just kind of, if it works out, it looks pretty interesting, because it'll look like kind of spontaneous. But I kind of like that though. So that's one thing I wanted to go over. Like this tree, I realized that, yeah, like I don't have to make it that dark. The other thing I could go over is, like, so yeah, I just used these felt tip pens, the marker, paint marker things, and then also I have like a finer line, which I would use sort of last, if at all. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about how these things, again, this is mixed media, so these things do react a little differently. So you kind of have to put down some, let's say you decide, okay, I want to make this look kind of dark. Again, I'm sort of just going off of like this, the sketch. But like that's what I was doing before, but I didn't know how dark to make the tree, like because of the color. And so I made it too dark basically, and then after a while I pretty much just had to paint over. which going back to like the idea of like the advanced concepts, it's sometimes you subconsciously want for it to, because this actually looks more like the character, so that's kind of what I'm getting at, is it's the happy accident. Maybe I can be the Bob Ross of character design, or Bob Ross of illustration. So we got about 5 minutes left. Maybe, so this is, for me, like I call it troubleshooting, so I'm not going to create more problems for myself or create more work. I'm going to be pretty safe with it going forward, in the sense that like I'm just going to refine some of these shapes without messing up the values or messing up like the composition. I'm not going to do anything too drastic. I'm just kind of happy that she looks all right. But yeah, I mean, she looks like a character, so that's cool. Now, of course, you can do more sketches of this, but like of the character and stuff. And at this point, if we are talking about troubleshooting, you kind of just take it as far as you can, kind of like how I fixed the horizon and stuff. And if you don't have to do more, then I wouldn't. I mean, it's already pretty much overworked at this point, but like it's still okay. And I would just kind of step away from it, and yeah, and just kind of, if you really see like an idea, like, oh yeah, like that should look like something, then add it. But otherwise, like, I'd leave it. I mean, there's a few kind of details that could be added. So for example, to get like that light green, I don't actually have that in this paint color. I just have like this one green color. So I ended up using, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it was hard to tell, like, should this be the dark or the light? And so it ended up being more of the, like, kind of the dark, the shaded area. And like the light area needed to be lighter. So that was part of what I had to figure out. And when I made it too dark, I had to paint over it, because I couldn't, there was no way to make it lighter, obviously, with ink. So yeah. Plus there's like this issue that I had with drawing trees, that it just kind of looked like a giant broccoli sprout. So with that, if you have that problem, part of it is the leaves have to look more variety, and you need to be able to see like the branches and like the spaces in between. Otherwise it just looks like a giant broccoli. And then to kind of darken it, maybe to kind of add like the individual shadows, I would just go in with like a smaller like green pen. And yeah, it'll kind of fade because of the mixed media thing. But sometimes, like, that's as much as you need. Like, you don't need it to go darker than that. So that's one thing with the trees. Same with like her cloak. You can kind of refine it by using a smaller, and then yeah, the color will fade. So you just kind of put this down and then wait like a little while. But that's kind of good at this point, because yeah, you're not wanting to create more work. And it might actually have a better effect, like bring the character to life. So I know this week I kind of want to wrap up the week. It's a new month and a new week is starting, so, and almost a new year. So maybe I'll just kind of keep it at this. So that's kind of a cool look, honestly. This isn't bad for character design or concept art or like studies. I kind of like it. But yeah, I'm just gonna wrap up this video because when I'm in the flow state, time flies by, but I know when you're watching it, it might feel different. So with that said, that's another 10 minutes, and I want to thank you for joining me today. And if you like these videos, please support the channel by liking, subscribing, commenting, and until next time, keep on sketching.